Welcome to the WISE conference, a conference being held in a situation we would have found it hard to imagine even a year ago, with the impacts of COVID only just emerging, and when no one wanted to think it could be as bad as this, even most of the scientists. However, hopefully we can really see our way to the end of it now, assuming we can all manage to stick to the scientific advice this time. What should we learn from COVID? And in particular, what can we learn that's relevant to sustainability and to meeting our critical net zero climate goals? I say what should we learn rather than what have we learnt, because I've attended so many lessons learned sessions which weren't actually about lessons learned at all. They were about lessons we should be committing to learn, but probably never did. We had the session, we labelled the file lessons learned, and we put it away, probably learning little. We can't afford to do that this time. This time, the lessons really need to stick. So the first lesson for everyone, but particularly for our politicians and leaders, is that we all need to listen to the scientists. Scientists have been predicting that such a global pandemic should be on the risk register, and we needed to plan for it, but we didn't get round to it. Probability is hard to communicate, and Michael Gove, of course, famously felt that we had had too much of experts. Climate change is rather similar. The experts are giving us some pretty consistent messages, and we can see it happening already around us, but we're still finding it very hard to commit to the changes and the investments. Bill Gates wants to help find solutions, but he doesn't want to give up his private jets and big houses or reduce his meat consumption. He thinks if we focus on decarbonising the steel industry and cement and the power sector, he will be able to continue to pay to offset his huge personal carbon footprint. We also need to be able to communicate probability better. The impacts of climate change like flooding, droughts, wildfires, etc. need to be planned for in terms of probabilities. There is a significant probability that we will see more than a metre of sea level rise by the end of the century, but it's not certain. If you live in an area where there is a 1 in 100-year chance of severe flooding, and you had a bad flood last year, that doesn't mean it won't happen again next year. But the really good news is that the review of the Thames 2100 plan, which is the critical plan to keep London and the Thames estuary safe in the face of the changing climate and that potential sea level rise, is being led by a woman in the Environment Agency, a woman called Julie Foley. The second thing that has been brought to everyone's attention is that scientific breakthroughs are often led by women. Well, of course, we all knew that already, but I think a lot of people didn't. And women have been right at the front of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and of course, half of the husband and wife team that developed the Pfizer BioNTech one. It's been great to hear them on the radio every morning. It's been such a refreshing change. We need the same share of the world's brains addressing climate change if we are to see the same rapid and exciting developments. At the moment, there are still far too few women in leading roles like Julie Foley's in climate change mitigation and adaptation. These are exciting, fulfilling jobs that really make a difference, and we need to make sure that girls have the right educational opportunities and encouragement to enable them to take up these interesting professional careers with good salaries and good prospects. I think we've all realised that we can adapt much faster than we thought we could. We've been discussing online medical appointments for years and not making much progress, and within weeks, they became the norm. We've been saying that having some staff working from home wouldn't be very efficient or convenient, and yet when forced to, we found increased efficiency and productivity from staff working online from home. We've been saying that we had to travel to meet customers overseas to do deals, and yet many businesses have continued on Zoom and Teams, reducing our carbon footprint from business flights to almost nothing and saving money. Perhaps the behavioural changes we need to meet our net zero targets can be achieved more easily and quickly than we think too, reducing our meat and dairy consumption, reducing the miles we drive and walking or cycling instead, reducing the number of flights we take. Reducing emissions could make us healthier and wealthier as well. Anyone who lives in a city, I think, has learnt the real value of green space. We've really come to value our parks and gardens and the trees we can see from our windows, for the opportunity to take fresh air, to exercise, or just to see nature and have our spirits lifted. Green space and trees will be critical to tackling climate change. They do marvelous things like take carbon dioxide out of the air. They can absorb floodwater or deflect the path of flooding. They can provide shade in very hot summer temperatures. They deliver these multiple benefits in reducing CO2 levels and adapting to the changing climate. But it's not all positive. And I think we have all noticed that disasters can be very, very unfair, both in the way they impact people and the way we respond. Young people have had their educations severely disrupted. Many young people are also employed in the hospitality sector. New graduates are finding it hard to find jobs with a likely lifetime impact on their salaries. The young are having a pretty terrible time. Women disproportionately work in retail and are losing their jobs all around us. With children needing support for learning at home and many parents trying to work from home as well, we see women typically managing both jobs and much of the homeschooling. Plenty of evidence is now showing that women's jobs have been disproportionately affected by COVID. But it's not just young people and women. Death and illness among the BAME community has been shockingly high in this pandemic. And the poor, likely to be in the most insecure employment, such as office cleaners and Uber drivers, have been very badly affected. Young people will be disproportionately affected by climate change. My generation and those before me have profited from the exploitation of fossil fuels and seen rapidly rising standards of living. Today's young people will have to solve the problems and live with the consequences, and as a result, may well not see those very high levels of growth again. The poor globally are already living with the consequences of sea level rise, storms, drought, and exceptionally high summer temperatures. Fairness has to be a core tenet of our approach to addressing climate change. Policy to address climate change must address fairness. Some of the things we need to do will cost money or have upfront costs and pay back over very long periods, like making our homes zero carbon. So it's essential that policy for decarbonisation ensures that these costs don't fall on those least able to pay. So I do hope that we learn at least these 5 important lessons from COVID. The challenges of climate change are urgent and need major investment, but there is still time to address them, just if we get on with it now. And if we use that investment in the right way, we can deliver the emissions reduction along with investment in training and jobs for people in all parts of the country, delivering better homes, cleaner air, more green space, lots of additional benefits. So we can do this well, or we could really miss an opportunity. To achieve this, as I've said before, we will need all the talent available to us. At this conference, you will hear lots of great stories about how we can ensure we tap into that talent. Stories about outreach, early careers, stories about retraining, developing a gender-balanced workforce, inspiring personal stories, stories that will give you lots of ideas that you can use to deliver the equality and fairness we need so that we have the STEM workforce that can deliver a more sustainable world. Have a great conference. Thank you for listening.
Good morning and a very warm welcome on behalf of WISE. I'd like to extend special thanks to Baroness Brown for setting the scene so well. I'm Kay Hussain and I joined WISE last month as I passionately believe in everything it stands for. I'm delighted to welcome you all today, though I do wish it could have been in person rather than online. So why did we choose inclusive growth, transformative action, and driving sustainability as our 2021 conference theme? Well, it's quite simple. The UN has said that what we do in the next 8 to 10 years will determine the quality of life for the next 100 years. Amongst other things, the COVID pandemic has given us an opportunity to reflect, to reset, and to rebuild in a more sustainable way. We believe that to do this will require far greater innovation, which can only come through greater diversity. Businesses therefore need to keep diversity and inclusion high on their agenda in order to develop the skills they need to meet these challenges. Now that the pandemic has elevated the importance of STEM into the global spotlight, businesses will likely have fortuitous access to a potentially much wider talent pool from which to attract and reskill. As Baroness Brown just highlighted, we need a collaboration of the best possible talent at all levels to tackle the climate emergency. Sustainability impacts us all, so we need everyone on board, working together to achieve a desirable outcome. This means that a gender-balanced, diverse and inclusive workplace, which represents all parts of our society, is now more important than ever before, because without it, we would be missing out on potentially game-changing talent. Creativity and innovation must be harnessed to address the most challenging problems of our lifetime and that of our children's lifetime. We already know that diversity and inclusion bring together talent with unique experience, knowledge, and perspectives. This generates more ideas, improves problem solving, and drives creativity and innovation, thereby strengthening the team and ultimately the results. There is also growing recognition that to be more sustainable, we must first be more equal. Fighting for such equality of opportunity, Malala deservedly became the youngest ever winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. Today, we're excited to hear from a range of equally inspiring advocates, all of whom fully appreciate the essential link between building diversity and inclusion at every stage of the pipeline in order to deliver a more sustainable world. We must remain steadfast in engaging young people, especially girls, to showcase the exciting and fulfilling opportunities available in sustainability-focused STEM. And Tracy Lewis will be talking more about this. We need to leverage the enthusiasm and engagement which young leaders such as Greta have inspired and show girls that careers in STEM really can change the world. Many of the role models on our WISE platform, My Skills, My Life, cite improving the world as their key driver. We need to provide a platform for female change makers, so relatable role models, ongoing development, a voice and a seat at the table are all essential components if we are going to make a sustainable difference. And Penny Endersby will be talking more about this. We need to be more open-minded about the potential routes into STEM. This means building flexibility into the very DNA of our business policies and practices. And Lilla Thompson will be talking more about this. Here at WISE, we're all about what makes good business sense. And the correlation between diversity and improved business performance was long since proven. Now, just as with gender balance, we know that sustainability is a key driver for business success in today's world. And Fax Jones will be talking more about this. So today, we want to inspire you, challenge you, and spark conversations, then show you some practical ways we can work together on this. I know that many of you are already WISE members, and therefore very aware of how we can help organizations along their D&I journey, no matter their starting point. Those who have embraced our 10 steps model to help develop, progress, and track their journey are realizing the benefits of their own commitment, as well as learning from best practice sharing with other signatories. Any conference or event is all about action. So wherever you're listening in from, whatever your role, you can be part of the WISE network to influence real change. Think throughout this morning about what you can and will do to help women succeed and prosper in STEM. Now more than ever before, we need a dose of WISE inspiration. So I hope you can steal ideas with pride from our expert speakers. Use these takeaways to help drive change and personal development in your organization, as we all strive for a more equitable and sustainable world. We want you to actively participate throughout this conference, so please share your thoughts and ideas in the chat Let us know what you will change, and remember to connect and unite with other like-minded people in planning a better future. Our WISE community is all about positive and tangible action and enhancing that ever-important network. You can also join the conversation at the WISE Conference 2021 by tweeting us at the WISE campaign and using the hashtag WISEConference 2021. Thank you and enjoy the conference.
Hello, hi, I'm Tracy Lewis, co-founder and director of Catalyse Change, and also a Women in Sustainability Bristol Hub lead. And I'm delighted to be here today to talk about organic outreach with reference to the work that we do at Catalyse Change to inspire, empower and skill girls and young women as sustainability leaders and change makers. Has that slide just moved on? I can't see the slide moving. I can still just see the first slide. Ah, yes, okay, next slide. So what am I going to cover today? So who are we at Catalyse Change? Our vision, what we do, the outcomes and the impacts, and the outreach that we're doing. And I'll explain to you our strategy and some of the challenges and learning around that. And also we'll be giving you opportunities if you'd like to get involved. And also if you've got any questions, I'll be taking those at the end. A short video for you taken 2 years ago at Catalyst Bootcamp. Catalyse Change is a social enterprise, and we're all about inspiring, empowering and skilling girls and young women for sustainable futures. We do this through working in 3 broad areas: sustainability skills and knowledge, green education and careers, and well-being and personal development.
So there's an increasing awareness of the climate emergency and the impact of social injustice. And at Catalyse Change, we want young women to be part of the solution.
You know, we are a valuable part of society and we don't look at ourselves and appreciate the good things about us. I'm quite like a fast-paced person, so I never really take the time to stop and just relax properly.
I really came to feel like, okay, I'm understanding myself a bit more now and
what I wanted to do with my life and what I loved, what I was passionate about.
I wanted to leave this world with a legacy or having done something that makes a difference.
Now I feel prepared to input my ideas with more confidence and be unapologetic about that.
So as you just heard, Catalyse Change is a social enterprise with the mission to provide girls and young women with the knowledge, skills, confidence and connections needed to actively pursue futures as sustainability leaders and change makers. And I'm co-founder and director with 2 other directors, Helen Taylor and Julie Ellison. We have a wide experienced advisory board of women working in sustainability and over 50 brilliant voluntary mentors currently. And we've supported nearly 1,000 girls and young women now since we started in 2016 through our learning and mentoring program and our wider outreach. And why do we do this? Well, as we all know, we're facing a climate emergency. The stakes couldn't be higher, and we need at least 50% of our population to be inspired, empowered, and skilled to be part of the solution. And we all know about the inspirational Greta and the Fridays for the Future movement, which she inspired, which was a revelation in showing us the power of young people and their capacity to create change. Maya Rose, pictured there at one of the Bristol Climate Youth Strikes, came to some of our first workshops and attended our Catalyst Bootcamp 2 years ago. You would have just seen her in that video. She was already an activist with a large social media following, but she came on our program because she wanted support with her confidence to be able to speak up when she was attending youth advisory boards for well-known charities. Young white males were still assuming leadership positions, and she wanted support with that. And we couldn't be prouder of her and more delighted for her, as she now has an honorary doctorate from Bristol University and is taking a leading role in the activism and environmental campaigning space. And so what do we do? Well, these are two pictures from our last Catalyst Bootcamp, which was a 3-day residential program at Bristol University. Over 3 days, we support the young women with inspiration and pathways into green careers, with active sustainability sessions around soft and hard skills, and personal well-being and development is really is a key part of the program also, as you can't be an effective change maker unless you have that inner confidence and belief that you can be the change. Clearly, we couldn't run that last year, so within 5 weeks, we pivoted to an online program over 3 weeks instead of 3 days, the Catalyst Summit. And that allowed us to increase the number of young women that we worked with from 30 to 60. They came from all over the UK, but also other parts of the world, from Europe and also the Congo, showing the potential now of us to scale it as an online program. So what are some of the outcomes that we measure through our program? Well, knowledge, skills, and confidence around sustainability and the options available within careers and education. There's the understanding of strengths and the goals required to achieve social and environmental sustainability. And also it's the opportunities to network and organize with each other and other women in sustainability. And some of the wider impacts that we're seeing, there's this real increase in their confidence, their aspiration, their belief that they can be the change that they wish to see in the world. And some of the personal development and well-being skills that we give them, they tell us that these are things which are really helping them to stay strong and resilient. You know, clearly now, young women are feeling really isolated. They've got a very uncertain future from universities and schools, and they're working from home, as are all young people. And so it's a very difficult time. They really need this support. And what we do provide them with are these networks which are really strong and go way beyond our program, both in terms of their peer networking, but also professional networks through the mentor that they're assigned, and also through LinkedIn. We have groups where we support each other and provide new sort of opportunities and advice and support. And also around education. So we do provide a lot of new knowledge, skills and inspiration around the different jobs available within sustainability and the different education courses that they might want to use to get there. So what are the pathways available? And of course, the work experience and the careers in sustainability is a really key area that we're helping them with. Just to give you a few examples from young women we've worked with just in the last couple of years. Megan, in the middle slide there, she interned with us around our digital comms in the summer, as well as attending our program. And she's just landed her dream job with Greenhouse PR. Also Amelia, in a very competitive field, got a job with Ecotricity. Also just had feedback from Eilish that she got a place at Oxford University, and really cited the support from her mentor who helped her with her application process. Maya Rose has also got a place at Cambridge. But, you know, there's also support at many levels. So some of the young women who came in on our bursaries last year, I've just been reading their feedback. So they're doing A-levels at schools in Bristol, and they've really been supported in terms of deciding even whether to apply for university and given support with the application process and their confidence. And so what is our outreach strategy? So we really focus now really solely on Instagram in terms of being able to engage with the young women, or our catalysts, aged from 16 to 14. They're not really using Facebook anymore, so we focus on Instagram, and we do use LinkedIn and Twitter as powerful tools as well. Clearly, LinkedIn's a really great space in terms of supporting them with their career development and professional networks. And it's also really good for us to raise our profile and for us to connect with new partners, sponsors, and mentors. As partnerships are really crucial, and pre-COVID, we were doing a lot of work with schools. We were running a mentoring program for disadvantaged communities in South Bristol. and going in and doing school workshops and at conferences has been a big part of our outreach. We also work closely with youth organisations who are already working solely with young people in disadvantaged communities. That really helps us to place our bursaries with young women who really need them. And obviously the universities, Bristol University and UE, have been supporting us for the last few years. Sponsors are really crucial for our work. Natracare have come on board as a strategic partner again this year, and also Pucker Teas, Burgess Salmon, Green Unlimited, valued partners who've already confirmed for bursaries for this year. Clearly, it's really important for us to be able to utilise their networks and vice versa for engaging more young women with our work. And in terms of mentors, the Women in Sustainability Network, which I'm hub lead in Bristol, it's a professional network for women creating sustainable futures. And many of the women in that network have become mentors on our programme, and they also help us with our outreach, because obviously there are parents and there are teachers in all of these networks where people really care about sustainability. And it's all about building community, and we look at lots of different ways that we can do that, obviously through social media, through events we run regular monthly meetups and masterclasses. We develop an email list for newsletters. And then the next stage is helping the young women to become involved in campaigns and projects where they can learn the skills from our programme. And what are the challenges around it? Well, it can be really hard to find the young women. And, you know, we've put in a lot of legwork over the last 5 years, really focusing in on different messages and engaging with them to find out what they're interested in and where they hang out so we can meet them where they are. And keeping that level of engagement is difficult. The online space is busy and young people have a lot of distractions. So we need to be creating quality content and meetups that really respond to their needs. So our last masterclass last month was around mindset. There's a lot of isolation and anxiety going on as a result. So that's an area we've been focusing on. And then how we can build that community, because it's really important going forward that we build on what we've got. Finance is a challenge. We haven't had any grants since COVID. And corporate sponsorship has been the one way we've been able to deliver the programme and provide the free bursaries for young women from less advantaged backgrounds. And we really need to now be looking at how we create a sustainable business model to really grow our impact and reach going forward. So in terms of the learning and opportunities, we know the young women really want the safe space to connect with each other, with like-minded peer network, and also the professional sustainability networks, which we connect them with. Online learning. Now everybody's learning online, so it's becoming a lot more accepted and every day that people are learning online. And so we really need to build on that opportunity to increase the scale of our programs and make it a lot more inclusive. And also there's the power of mentoring. Mentoring has been a real success story. It has such an impact on the young women. So we really want to grow that. And our next project is really building on our digital community, which is going to help us to also create a sustainable business model. In the summer, we're launching a pilot hub with a membership so we can really create the buzz and the value of the Catalyst Summit. Instead of it just happening once a year, it can be a space where they can come to and have support and on a weekly basis. They can join for a month, 3 months, or stay with us for the year. And that's what we're going to be researching and trialing. And also career pathways. So some of the young women have already now started to have work experience and internships. Chloe, who came on our boot camp a few years ago, then got an internship with Pucker Teas, who we went on a study visit to. And now they've just sponsored her to do an MSc in Sustainable Development at Exeter. And quite a few of our sponsors are quite keen now to how they can develop those relationships. So we really want to be able to facilitate that in terms of their career pathways. Would you like to get involved? We would really value your support, both as a mentor and or a speaker. Now with our new digital hub, there are a lot more opportunities for sustainability professionals to work with us with masterclasses, skill sessions, or just providing the inspiration about your own green career and how you got there. It's all so helpful for the young women. Would your organisation or business be able to sponsor a bursary for a girl or young woman from less advantaged background to come on our programme? I'd love to hear from you if you're interested to find out more. My name's Tracy Lewis, tracy@catalysechange.com. And please do join our journey. So on Instagram, we're at catalysechange, Twitter at catalysech. And yeah, it would be really good to connect with you. So we have a few minutes left, and I would love to take any questions you might have. I am just going to have a look at what might have come in. Okay, so what's involved in being a mentor? So yeah, I mean, we are going to just be recruiting again for our mentor program from April before our summer program kicks off again in July. So if you're interested, do let us know. There will be a minimum of 2 hours per month for 3 to 6 months once you're allocated a mentee. And also we provide training. Obviously that will be online, so that makes it a lot more accessible. And then you meet your mentee at the Catalyst Summit in July. We do provide ongoing support and Zoom check-ins with other mentors. Any other local hubs outside Bristol? Well, now everything's online. It's interesting, isn't it? Because we haven't actually yet developed any new local hubs. We were going to be developing one in Exeter pre-COVID, but now everything's online. All of our services and programs are accessible to anyone, anywhere. So hopefully in the future, we will be developing other local hubs, you know, once we are able to meet again in person. But yeah, I mean, right now, because it's online, that isn't necessary. Bear with me. It's cancelling the timer there. Let me just see if there's any other questions. What inspired you to start the programme? Yeah, so, well, I mean, I worked in sustainability all my career. I worked for the Soil Association for 18 years. And so I was working within organic food and farming, but all with sustainability objectives and principles. But I started to become very aware of gender inequalities, clearly in other parts of the world, but realizing it was up here, right here on our doorstep. And I've got my own teenage daughter, Kira, who could really start to see some of the impacts that were being had on her and her peers through body image, cyberbullying. And when I realized that 1 in 3 young girls and young women were suffering from anxiety and depression, I realized there was a real need for some, you know, empowerment and confidence support. And as I work in sustainability, and that's where all of my networks are, that is why, that's sort of how Catalyse Change developed. I started to get some experience working with youth organisations and charities as sort of a trustee and an advisor, but then it sort of seemed natural to develop Catalyse Change as something where we could really work in the sustainability space for young women who wanted to make a difference. As a woman who studied engineering in Bristol and was looking for support in the area, why have I never heard of Catalyse Change? Well, we've only been around since 2016, so I don't know whether that would be the reason. Yeah, I mean, we're you know, relatively new, small social enterprise. Hopefully you would have heard of us if you'd have been studying at that time, because we were partnering with Bristol University. So yeah, that's the only reason I can think of, but I'm glad that you've heard of us now. And if you'd like to give something back and be a mentor for young women in Bristol, what should I know if I know a young girl in Bristol who would benefit from the programme? Well, you know, please do get in touch. Just email me or look on our website and do join us. All of our information's on Instagram at Catalyse Change. love you to join our programme. We've got lots going on. I can see we're about to finish shortly, so I will draw it to a close there. Thank you ever so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking to some of you afterwards. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this conference. I'm Penny Endersby. I'm the Chief Executive of the Met Office, and I have a particularly soft spot for WISE as an organisation. They actually gave me my first experience of working in scientific research through a sixth form scholarship, and I'm always delighted to have the chance to offer something back. And I'm going to speak to you today about climate change, which really is the defining issue of our time. And it's going to be something that will have profound impacts on both humanity and all the environmental and ecosystems of the planet. And science is absolutely critical to both our understanding of climate change and what's happening and how it might develop, and also to the policy that we need to make to respond to it. So I'm going to talk to you today specifically about women's contribution to climate change from the very earliest dawn of climate science to the contributions to the state-of-the-art models we now use to predict and characterise it, to the policy making that needs to go on in response. And I'll also speak a little bit about the differential impacts of climate change on women around the world and on how we can make a difference. And before I move off this slide, I just want to encourage you, please do use the question and answer function. Ask your questions as we go through, and I'll come to them at the end, but I've definitely left time to do that. So we've known a long time that carbon dioxide was warming the climate. And when I came into climatology from defence, I was really quite shocked how long we've understood this. And the greenhouse effect was first proposed in 1824 by Fourier, but he didn't prove it experimentally. And the first person who did that was the American women's rights campaigner and amateur physicist Eunice Newton Foote. And she did some experiments in 1856, putting test tubes of different gases in sunlight and measuring the temperatures and seeing that the one with the carbon dioxide in warmed faster than any of the others. And she wrote a paper which was presented at the American Association for the Advancement of Science. There was no reason why she couldn't have presented that paper herself, but in fact it was read for her by Professor Joseph Henry, who was the founder of the Smithsonian Institute. And although there was a little coverage in the press of what she had to say, it didn't really gain much traction. In fact, we don't even have any pictures of Eunice Foote today. We don't know what she looked like. And very little got across the Atlantic to European understanding. And if only I think we'd paid more attention to her at the time, we might be in a better position than we are now. So a lot of further work was done to quantify the effects of carbon dioxide and carbon compounds on global heating through the stages of the early 20th century. And we began to be able to detect a rise in global temperatures around the 1950s and 1960s. And in 1970, which is the year I was born, the Met Office published an important paper giving the prediction of how warming would proceed under different carbon scenarios, which was effectively correct within the error bars we put in it, and has been shown to be correct by the following 50 years of global heating. So we have really understood this problem for a very long time, but there wasn't much interest in it until the 1980s, and that's really where my story continues. And our next heroines of climate science that I want to talk to you about are Professor Susan Solomon and Dame Julia Slingo. And Susan Solomon is an American professor who works at the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration in the US. And she was the person who did the first experiments around the ozone hole over Antarctica. And you're probably aware of this. It's something that was known about, that ozone depletion was happening from the mid-80s. And in fact, we can see it going back in the records now. We look for it back to 1976. But in 1985, Susan led the NOAA experiment over McMurdo Sound to measure ozone depletion over the Antarctica, and looked at the high clouds that form in the cold air there and the effect that chlorine compounds were having on them, and the fact that it was leading to really severe local depletion. And that led really impressively promptly to the Montreal Protocol in 1987, which led to the bans of chlorofluorocarbons. And as if saving the world once wasn't enough for Susan, she was then part of the International Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change First Assessment Scientific Panel, which was chaired by John Horton, whom we'll also come back to later, who did my job. He was a Director General of the Met Office. And with John Horton and Al Gore, she was one of the people awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007 for the increased understanding of climate change. And actually, we lost John Horton to COVID in 2020. And she delivered for us the first of one of a series of memorial lectures in his name with his family present about her current work on climate change, which was a really moving event. And the second lady on this slide is Dame Julia Slingo. And she started work at the Met Office, working on the characterization of clouds in weather and climate models, which is something that's absolutely critical to their accuracy. And then she went and did a stint at NOAA. And then she set up her own research group at Reading University, where she was the first female professor of meteorology in the country. And she followed that by being the first female president of the Royal Meteorological Society. And then she came back to us as our first female chief scientist. And now she's retired. She is the special advisor to the Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization on climate change. So she's still making a huge difference to the field and to our understanding and response to it. Now, my next climate heroine may surprise you slightly, because it's Margaret Thatcher, whom you probably don't think of in those terms. But she was one of the first politicians, and unusually for a politician of the right, to push for real governmental response to recognise climate change in the late 80s and early 90s. And she was, in fact, she always said she was more proud of being the first Prime Minister with a science degree than she was of being the first female Prime Minister. She isn't the last female Prime Minister, but so far as I know, she's still the last one with a science degree, which is a rather a sad state of affairs. And in 1988, she gave a speech to the Royal Society where she said that we had this planet on a full repairing lease and we'd better start acting responsibly with regard to maintaining the planet on that lease. And then she went on to address the UN General Assembly on the same lines. And she got John Horton to come and explain to her cabinet the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's first assessment of climate change. And that led on in 1990 to the foundation of the Met Office Hadley Centre. And their picture, drawing back that curtain, is still on the wall just round the corner from me in Exeter. And we've had 30 intervening years of doing our world-leading climate change within the Hadley research, within the Hadley Centre, and that continues to this day. And also on the policy side, I'd like to draw your attention to someone you may not have heard of, and that's the Costa Rican diplomat, Cristina Figueres. And she became the Executive Secretary of the UN Convention on Climate Change in 2010. And there'd just been, so every year, there's a conference of the parties on climate change led by the UN, and COP15 had just happened in Copenhagen, and it ended without any agreement. So there were lots of ambitious proposals for how governments should respond to limit climate change, but they weren't adopted. And Christina changed to proposing rather more incremental policies that were able to draw more people together. And that led eventually to her being a real architect of the Paris Agreement in COP21. And in that agreement, 200 nations committed to trying to keep global warming to well under 2 degrees by the end of this century, and preferably to under 1.5 degrees, which we now know is more likely to be a threshold for dangerous climate change. And as you will see, 1.5C is still very much touch and go. And we're coming to be hosting in the UK COP26 in Glasgow this year, where we hope to gain further commitments to limiting that warming further. Coming back to the science then, one of the things that's really essential for climate change research is to have good observational data sets of all kinds of planetary effects, and they're vital to our understanding. And I'd like to speak to you about the work of 2 of our current Hadley Centre researchers. And on the left there is Nick Rayner, who leads our observations group. And her work has been into sea surface temperatures and sea ice concentrations and distributions, which are, like clouds, one of the things that are really important to how the planetary system responds and a vital part of climate monitoring. And a paper she published early in her career has been so vital to everybody else's modelling of this. It's now been cited 5,000 times. But the team she leads works on a wide range of different climate monitoring. And on the right is Kate Willett, whose work on the HADIST the database looks at surface humidity and relative humidity all over the planet. And what she's been showing through her observations is an unexpected result of relative humidity falling over land. And recent updates to that work also show that humidity is falling over the oceans. And that's somewhat counterintuitive and not necessarily what we would have expected in a warming climate. And we're still looking to understand fully what's going on there, so research is ongoing. But one thing we can say with great confidence is that humidity is really important to the way that climate change will impact us. So it's very important, for example, in predicting when wildfires will happen and how bad they will be. It's important to heat stress on people and animals. And one point I really wanted to make here is that mitigation, which is reducing the amount of carbon compounds we emit, is not enough. We are already in a changed climate, and we know the climate is going to change further. So it's also really important we plan for adaptation. And that's one of those things that being able to predict enables us to do better. So I'm going to move away there from the heroines of climate research and climate policy and look a bit about how we're doing as a species in dealing with climate change. And this is why we need to be adapting. And if you look first of all at the chart on the top right, you can see that the world has changed quite a bit since the time of Eunice Foote, which would be towards the left of that x-axis there to today. And in 2020, we think the world was 1.28 centigrade warmer than it would have been in pre-industrial times. And that made 2020 the second in the Met Office series of warmest years, and it topped off a run of the 10 straight warmest years on record. So there's no doubt at all that climate change is happening. It's happening now, and it's happening faster. And if you look at those two egg timers on the left, you can see where we've got to with the amount of carbon we've burnt. So looking at the top one first, that's the situation we would want to be in to give ourselves a 2/3 chance of keeping global heating to 1.5C. And we know we've already burnt 2,400 gigatons of carbon compounds. And we believe that in order to stay within the 1.5C at that chance, we've got about 357 gigatons left. And currently we're burning about 35 a year. So that means that we've got 10 years worth of carbon left to burn if we then stopped dead and burnt no more, which is a very unlikely situation. And even if we wanted only to give ourselves a 50% chance of hitting the 1.5C target, that would leave us with 495 gigatons of carbon left to burn, which is still not very much better. And you can look at how that goes if you then come to the chart on the bottom right. And the blue line shows the historical emissions, which may, with the help of COVID, have peaked now. And in order, though the other lines correlate with the green egg timer and the orange egg timer. So if we wanted to follow the path of the green egg timer, we'd need to follow the green line down to zero emissions in 2040. If we were happy to follow the path of the orange egg timer, we would be able to get to naught in 2050 if we did a linear reduction. And the other line is something called the strong green stimulus line, which was proposed by Forster and others, which would enable us to reduce our emissions by half by 2030, which is really the quick wins. And in the UK, we have nearly already reduced our emissions by half from their peak. We're down about 40%. So we've shown it is possible. And then we'd need to get to zero, which is much more difficult, because that leaves you the really intractable things like air travel by 2050. And Forster shows that in order to follow that strong green stimulus line, we'd need to invest around 1.2% of GDP globally, which doesn't sound like it should be too impossible when you think what's at stake. And I'm going to move on now to talk about the impacts of climate change on women. And women, in common with all disadvantaged groups, turn out to be more vulnerable to climate change impacts than men. And we think this is basically because around the world, women tend to have lower socioeconomic status and therefore to be more disadvantaged. And climate change is a stress multiplier. So it makes existing problems worse wherever it is. And worldwide studies around the world have shown again and again that women are more likely to die of heat stress in separate studies in China, France, and India. They're more likely to die in tropical cyclones from as far apart as Bangladesh and the Philippines. And when there are extreme weather events that are caused by climate change, women are more vulnerable to poor mental health as a result, to partner violence, and to food insecurity. And the graphs on the right are from a recent study that shows very strongly this correlation between gender inequality and vulnerability. So both of those graphs have gender inequality increasing on the x-axis. And the top one shows the vulnerability to climate change of the country and that correlation between that and gender inequality. And the second one also shows that countries with high gender inequality also tend to have less policies on climate action. And interestingly, I was in a talk, a talking group chaired by Lord David Willetts recently about responding to other global crises like the COVID pandemic. And again, that correlation between inequality, low trust in experts, and high death rates from the COVID pandemic was seen again there. So it's one of those things that is reflected often in good outcomes and bad outcomes for stress events around the world. So I'm going to talk now about where you and we might fit into this picture of global response to climate science. And my observation is that women are not unwilling to go into science professions, but very often when all my life I've done outreach events, I've done schools careers evenings, I've done talks to various from small children through to postgraduates on careers in science. And I often observe that women like to do something where they can see the direct result of their work on a human being. And they would rather, therefore, often go into like the medical profession than write the algorithm that says who should get the COVID vaccine in what order to reduce deaths. And climate science is one of those areas that bucks the trend a bit. And I think that feeling of doing something good for the environment often can attract female scientists into an area that they perhaps otherwise wouldn't go into. And we also notice that weather forecasting is much more direct and has that connection to the outcome of your work having an immediate benefit on society. And in the Met Office, we do rather well with our employment of female scientists. And you can see on the right the statistics for women in science generally, women on the UN climate panels, and female scientists at the Met Office. And not only do we have 36% of our scientists female, but actually our graduate intake is now just slightly over 50%, which is fantastic. And we are enormously committed to equality and diversity in all respects across the organisation. We want to draw on the widest talent pool and give everybody the best chance of being their best selves at work when they come. I have to say, if this were not a Women in Science talk and we were looking at our social diversity and our ethnic diversity, you would see there is still further to go, and we need to be thinking about all of them. So I want to end with my final slide talking about the Met Office's values, because they're something that's very close to all our hearts. And these values were built up not from something that the management came and imposed on the workforce, but the other way around, when we went out to our staff and asked them what it is that really motivates them to come to work and keep doing their best. And there's three that I think are very relevant to what I've been talking about today. And the first is being a force for good, and the fact that we know here that the work we do here both keeps people able to safe and thrive through our ability to forecast the weather, and particularly severe weather, effectively, but also the work we do in predicting and understanding and working out ways to mitigate and paths to resilience for climate change does good for the whole of humanity. And our models contribute absolutely to those international assessments. And many of our scientists chair those panels on the IPCC science working groups that come out with the global consensus on what global warming is doing. And the second one I wanted to draw your attention to is we live and breathe it. And everybody at the Met Office is really passionate about the work they do. And when I joined as chief executive, it was one of the things that came across, that nobody comes here to earn a salary and go home. And indeed, at the moment, they're not here. They're all dispersed around their various homes. But we've managed to sustain all our work throughout a year of being a virtual organisation very effectively, because people are so committed to delivering a good job, no matter what it is that they're doing. And the final one is our value of being better together, which both encompasses our commitment to diversity, but also to doing things in partnership and partnering with the people who are the best and can help us deliver the best work, whatever we do. So I think that brings me to the end of what I wanted to say. I will click on to the next slide and we'll just look at it to remind you that I'm eager to answer your questions. And I find just talking without taking questions very dry, even though I'd much rather see your smiley faces. So I'm going to click onto the question and answer thing and hope that there are some there now. But thank you very much for listening. Oh, good. And we have got some questions. So I will work my way down. Which is the first one that's mine? With all pragmatic realism, how achievable do you think limiting climate change to 1.5C is with US, China, Russia, India leadership and its variability? How much trouble are we in? Forgive me if I'm bobbing on and off the screen. I'll just pull this slightly closer because I can see I'm disappearing as I step forward to read. So I was quite pessimistic about achieving 1.5 degrees. I just couldn't see how we were going to do it. I do think that COVID has given us a bit of a second chance, not just because we've had some breathing space of lower emissions that means we may really have peaked, but because it's shown us different ways of doing things. And it's also shown us that when there really is a global crisis, we can respond and we can respond more quickly. So I'm slightly more hopeful than I was. And the other thing I'd say, and I think there was another 1.5 degree question further on, what is the significance of the 1.5 degrees, is that global heating is a ratchet. And that was one of the things that Susan Solomon said in the talk she gave. It's much, much easier to limit it than to reverse it afterwards. And if we go even to net negative, the cooling effect is very, very small. So you tend to get to a level and then stick to it for hundreds of years. So it's really important that we do try to limit it, not think we can overshoot and then somehow recover subsequently. We won't be able to do that in any meaningful time frame. The significance of the 1.5 is increasingly understood as those thresholds where you're going to get to some of what we might call the tipping points or those dangerous climate change impacts. And when it was set, we were only just beginning to understand it, but increasingly our signs of what is going to happen at different levels of climate change show that that is true. So that's the significance of that. I'm going to take what STEM subjects do you recruit from? So all of them. We take physicists, we take chemists, we take environmental scientists, we take people with meteorology degrees direct. We also train our own meteorologists from people who have other degrees. We take mathematicians, we actually take geographers. And the other thing I would say, we take lots of computer scientists and information scientists. And in fact, we're every much as world leading on wrangling the unbelievable amounts of data that it takes to make a weather forecast or a climate model. We're really cutting edge in that as well as on the underpinning science. So the tech side's just as important. And we don't just take graduates. So we have a very lively apprenticeship schemes. We take people from every age from 18 on and train on a whole range of things, including on the tech side and also on the forecasting. So we recruit very widely at every career stage. Now, what have I missed? What's your opinion regarding capping world population growth, the worst environment's enemy? I'm not sure I have an opinion on that. I think that it's something that, as far as I'm absolutely no expert on this, I think it's something that tends to happen naturally with better equality. So I would go for that. It's something that people have more children when their survival rates are lower. and population tends to stabilize in more equal countries where women have better access to education and better access to careers and better financial independence. So I would push for that rather than trying to limit population growth, as I would have it as an outcome, not something to aim for. How do you have successful conversations with people who deny the effect of climate change? I would refer you, if you want to look at somebody who's an absolute mistress of doing this, to Professor Catherine Hayhoe, who's a Canadian climate scientist. Go and look up her TED Talks, they're fantastic. And she says you need to find the common ground. So everybody cares about their children and grandchildren. Nobody wants to be a bad person. Lots of people who are climate deniers, and in this country we have fewer and fewer of them, are actually terrified of the solutions. They're afraid they're going to have to adjust their standard of living down, so they want to cover their ears and pretend it isn't happening. There may be a few people who are lobbying for big oil, but on the whole, actually, the large companies are pretty pragmatic and pretty realistic and look at facts when they make their business decisions. I would also refer you back to the comments I made about low trust in experts correlated with inequality and poor policies. So how you overcome that low trust, I'm not quite sure, and it's something that's very much a live discussion in the UK government circles at the moment. Again, I'm hopeful that maybe the pandemic has reminded us why you actually need people who know what they're talking about to give you scientific advice and to respond to crises. I can tell you that as the CEO of the Met Office, I get all kinds of emails into my inbox. I generally respond once with some evidence and then don't engage further. But I'm always happy to try to at least provide that evidence to people. And I always try to be polite and not combative, because I don't think setting people's backs up actually helps with convincing them. Is there anything specific you think you could point to that has given you a 50-50 split at the graduate intake level? Hard to point to one thing, because we work hard and look for evidence across lots of things. We do have very good STEM outreach programs to schools. I think, as I say, climate science is very much taught and covered and something that attracts people. We try to have good policies in everything from how we word advertisements, so we put them through text inequality checkers, to how we portray our scientists in our public materials, so that we don't have pictures and pictures of white men in white coats representing what it's like to be a scientist at the Met Office. It may well be that first Julia and then me being in post helped to contribute to that as well. So it's probably a combination of lots of things, but it is something we work hard at and that we're very pleased about. Look up these amazing women. Do you have any advice for women with a STEM background that isn't climate or sustainability based? I think I've probably answered that in what I recruit from. So we train, and particularly on the, if you can code, you can turn that to anything. So if you can't code, learn to code, I think would be my take. Does the UK COP26 delegation have enough women in the team? Yes, but perhaps not at the very most senior levels, and something I know they're still working on to try to make sure that that is represented. I actually have several women who were on some of my civil service development schemes are working on COP at the moment. So they are there at the sort of second level, but it is important they should be there as the public face as well. So I hope we'll see more of that. What did I learn from the defence sector, which I brought to the Met Office? I learned how to manage a whole range of experts who are much more expert in any of their individual fields than I can ever be. When I was a science expert myself, it was as an armour scientist. I blew things up for a living. So that's a world away from what I do these days. Lots of related science. So I worked on radars, I worked in the space sector, I worked in artificial intelligence, I worked in dispersion modelling and computational fluid dynamics. Actually, the fluid dynamic models used to model an explosive event are very similar, with many of the same choices that you make. as the ones we used to model the atmosphere. So there was quite a lot of overlap. And then there's all the senior leadership levels of how you be a figurehead for hundreds of people, and how you try to keep in touch with them, how you represent science to non-experts like policymakers. So those are all skills that I ported from my defence science career. Small steps at work to be more sustainable. I think it's in all our lives, work and home, and they're more blurred than ever. And this I can see is going to have to be my last question. David Attenborough has it right, I think. First of all, don't waste. So whatever it is that you're doing, at least make sure that all the carbon you burn, you actually need. Don't buy food and throw it away. Don't drive places you don't need to drive. You may not be able to cycle everywhere, but at least don't leave your engine running outside the school gate. But those would be my first steps. And I think it's the same in work as well. And be aware of how much carbon your internet usage costs, because when you look that up, it's really quite shocking. Don't stream in HD if not HD will do. I think I'm going to have to leave it there. I'm not going to have time to read a question. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for the fascinating questions, and I hope you enjoyed the talk.
Hi, thank you so much for that, Penny. That was fantastic. My name's Ruth Blanco, and I'm the Communications Director for WISE. And like everyone else has said, it's wonderful to see so many of you here today. I say see you, obviously I can't see you because we're online, and it's such a shame I can't see all your faces. But one thing that has been brilliant, we're able to work with our partners, Network Rail, and all of our sponsors to make this conference really inclusive. So we've had fantastically over 500 delegates sign up. And so, as you saw from the chat, we've got people from all across the UK, but also I believe from Spain and Italy and India and the US. So a warm welcome to everyone across the world. And we're all united in our cause to make gender balance in STEM more of a reality into the future. So thank you all very much for that. Because we're online, we want to make this as interactive as we can. Thank you so much for engaging in the chat and with the Q&A sessions. That's made a real difference. And also throughout the rest of today and into next week's sessions, we'll be using some polling as well, which you can engage with. So let's try some out now. As you know, through the narrative of our conference, we're looking at every stage in the pipeline as to how we need to address each area to encourage more gender balance in STEM. So if you look now, I think next week there should be a poll up. Let me know what you think at the moment where the effort needs to be put to really increase that gender balance in STEM, to get more women and girls engaged. Do you think that at the moment we need to focus on attraction and recruitment of women, or on retention of women in their current roles, or on promotion of women? So if you click on the link and put your thoughts in there, then we'll share those results at the end of the session today. But please keep chatting as well. And also, I know, like Kay said, do use our hashtag WiseConference2021 on all of your social media posts so we can share all of those as well and keep sharing this work with our networks. As you know, on Monday, it's International Women's Day, and the theme this year is Choose to Challenge. So what we'd ask you to do throughout today and also next week's session, think about what have you've heard, what's inspired you, what tips have you got that actually help choose you to challenge. And that's challenge yourself personally in your own career, challenge your organization or your company, and challenge your industry and your networks. Keep those action points to you, and we'll share those later on in the session as well. I think now it just remains for me to say thank you very much to all of our speakers for this morning. We're now going to have a short break, so it's time to grab another coffee, check your emails, and also maybe check in on your children that you're homeschooling to see how they're doing. So please grab a coffee, and we'll see you back here after the break. Thanks very much.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Lila Thompson and I'm the Chief Executive of British Water. Thank you so much, Wise, for inviting me to be a part of this conference. I think it's the first time I've actually participated and hopefully won't be the last time that I'll be joining you at the event. So this session is going to look at and explore whether a new wave of qualifications can influence the number of women in STEM. Can the creation of degree qualifications focused on sustainability, renewable technology and climate change encourage more female candidates to specialise in these areas? And what is the evidence to date? So I'm delighted to be joined today by Louise Parry, the Director of People and Organisational Development at Energy and Utility Skills. I'm also delighted to be joined by Dolores Ray, a lecturer in water policy and economics at Cranfield University. So what we're going to do is we're going to review the landscape, focus on the energy and utilities sector, then the water sector in particular in which I work and Lola, and explore possible next steps. So I'm going to begin by explaining that I'm currently a vice governor at a school that I used to go to in Lambeth, and it's called the Norwood School. And despite being a specialist performing and visual arts college, I'm really pleased to say that the proportion of 16 to 17-year-olds, female students, selecting science classes has increased over the past 2 years. In 2019-20, for example, for biology, 42% of students were female. In 2020-21, that increased to 82%, which is excellent. In 2019-20 for chemistry, 50% of students were female, and in 2020-21, that increased to 62.5%. The figures for physics has also increased from 37.5% to 55.6%, and maths, however, has stayed the same at 37.5%. Looking at A-level STEM data nationally, statistics indicate that the numbers of students entering chemistry, further maths and other sciences exams is falling except for physics. And looking also at data from STEM women, only 35% of STEM students in higher education are women. And at the bottom lie subjects such as computer sciences, engineering and technology subjects. Now, I'm going to talk a bit later about initiatives that British Water has started to support women in the water industry, but I'm now going to hand over to Louise Parry. So Louise, welcome.
Thank you, Lila. So just to give an overview of who we are, we're Energy and Utility Skills. We're a member-led company with over 60 members across the UK, with lots of the brands you would hopefully recognise, like National Grid, E.ON, all of the water companies and their supply chains. We help employers in the energy and utility sector develop, attract and maintain a sustainable skilled workforce through a range of specialist services, including the development of apprenticeships, industry training schemes and the delivery of endpoint assessment. To give you some context on the sector itself, the sector employs just under 600,000 people in over 51,000 different companies across gas networks, utilisation, power, water, waste and their supply chains. The sector is responsible for 57% of the national infrastructure pipeline projects and plays a key role in delivering net zero targets set out in the government's Energy White Paper and 10-point plan. Attending the WISE event today, it would be remiss of me not to include information on women working in the sector. We're yet to fully publish this data, so this is hot off the press. Women make up just 18.3% of the sector's workforce versus 47.3% across the UK. We've seen a decrease year on year of 2.3% in managers, directors and senior officials. But in the last week, we've seen the publication of the final Hampton-Alexander report, where all of our members in the FTSE 250 have achieved a target of over 33% women on their boards, and encouragingly, one of them actually achieving 55.6%. We can see a 4.3% reduction in women working in elementary occupations, but we're seeing increases in women working in sales and customer service. The sector does recognise in its workforce renewal and skills strategy that its current workforce fails to fully represent the communities it serves. Working together, the sector commitment is very much about improving diversity and inclusion, and that will help us better represent the 67 million people we serve every day, and to provide a working environment where everyone can be themselves. Energy and utilities companies are at the forefront of delivering that 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution to achieve those net zero targets set out by the government for 2050. So it's a really exciting time to join us. The opportunities within the sector are vast. We estimate there are 277,000 vacancies in the next 10 years, and these include 80,000 vacancies in skilled trade, 47,000 in process machine operatives, and 30,000 in professional and technical occupations. Development economics research undertaken on behalf of National Grid find that to get the UK to net zero, the energy sector alone needs to recruit 400,000 new jobs by 2050. We can see skill shortages in engineering, in technician occupations, as well as cross-sector disciplines such as quantity surveyors, data scientists, and cybersecurity. The industry is struggling to recruit enough people. By 2031, the development economics research forecasts that recruitment into green jobs will ramp up. So those choosing their GCSE options and starting secondary schools right now have a real opportunity to play a key role in net zero. The levels of interest in roles associated with net zero are encouragingly high. YouGov research undertaken on behalf of National Grid shows that 78% of respondents think that it's important to play a role in the UK's journey to achieving net zero. 57% are saying that they're interested in working for an organisation that significantly contributes to reaching net zero, and 83% of those are women. 81% of 18 to 24-year-olds think it's important, and 54% of 18 to 24-year-olds want to work in an organisation that contributes to net zero. So how do we do that? As Leila touched on, it's around STEM. So although more young people, particularly in Lula's school, are choosing to study STEM subjects, building a net zero workforce will require a significant increase. Once a young person opts out of STEM subjects, the route into net zero becomes harder. In that research undertaken by YouGov, UK adults cite the lack of relevant qualifications as the biggest barrier to getting a job in tackling climate change. And being able to attract and retain young people with STEM qualifications continues to be an issue. In the UK last year, more than 40% of physics graduates, which is a crucial target market for us, opted for careers in banking and technology. We struggle to compete because many have outdated views of what a job in engineering entails. We recognise the need to increase the number of students studying STEM A-levels, and when we look at the proportion of women at A-level apprenticeship and degree stages, this is an even bigger challenge, with women making up just 22% of A-level physics, 8% of STEM apprentices, and 15% of engineering and technology undergraduates. We can see that the starts and apprenticeships have been impacted significantly by COVID, and the development economics research estimates this number needs to grow by over 30% over the next 30 years to 56,000 annual enrolments. Emergent and employment skills gaps are one of the biggest obstacles to reaching net zero. The Skills for Jobs white paper is another significant step, and we welcome that in terms of providing the world-class post-16 education system in England. The energy and utility skills and energy and utility sector faces a skills shortage over the next decade, and we welcome the ambition for a market-led system with closer links to employers. But that process meets the skills needs of today and lacks the agility to cope with the emerging needs for employers. It takes about 5 years to develop an apprenticeship, from employers describing their demand through to the completion of a course. and this lack of agility is recognised in the white paper. So with new skills needed now to meet a carbon neutral future, it will fall to the sector, and that means that we'll need to collaborate and coordinate our efforts to face the skills challenges ahead. It's positive that the Skills for Jobs white paper places strong emphasis on adult upskilling and reskilling, and if the government is to realise its targets to build back greener and achieve those net zero ambitions, it does need to focus on the immediate challenges of delivering skilled workers for the UK's transition. So how do we get there? Sector attraction's a big part of that. There will be countless opportunities to reshape young people's perceptions of the sector and about net zero. This affords the sector the chance to put diversity and inclusion at the heart of what it does, at the heart of attraction and recruitment, and opening it up to the new and widest talent pool possible. To reach the widest possible audience, diverse voices in net zero related roles should feature prominently as part of the climate debate, and we've got a real opportunity with COP26 later this year. And no one organisation can do this on its own, so here we have a collaboration of 23 members from across the energy and utilities sector at Energy and Utilities Jobs. And what we can see in 12 months alone is 1.6 million opportunities to see opportunities within the energy and utility sector. And encouragingly, 57.6% of those site visits are from women. We need to inspire more young people to undertake STEM subjects from all backgrounds. We need to change the curriculum to include climate change, to provide green jobs within careers and application of these within lessons, applying that learning to a real life work scenario, using case studies, role models and campaigns like Energy and Utilities Jobs, and of course the support of WISE and their 10-step. What we can do, the sector is the vanguard in terms of delivering the net zero carbon targets set by government. For qualifications, it means that we need urgent action. The provision of a properly funded and coherent system of technical education that meets the needs of adults and young people is essential. The opportunity is there to develop the skills of the future, and working together will enable the development of training that's cost effective and consistent. In turn, this allows us to inform qualifications and apprenticeships of the future and really put employers in the driving seat for this. We urge all employers to take interest, as there will be fundamental changes. The opportunity is ours to seize and develop the skills the sector needs. We believe working together will enable the development of training that's cost effective and consistent, and that will allow us to inform the qualifications and apprenticeships of the future and put energy and utilities in the skills driving seat.
Thank you so much for that, Louise. That was a really, really good overview on energy and utility skills, and thank you for sharing the information and data that's hot off the press. I think one of the things that I'd like to explore with you, Louise, and Lola, is how we make the sectors that we work in more attractive. So the green and blue sectors, how do we make that more attractive? And also, I like the fact that you've mentioned a modular training approach, because some people can't and don't have the resources, especially in light of COVID and the financial impacts that that's had on people and families. They may not have the funding to go to further study and further education. So opportunities to learn while they earn is going to be critical, I think, moving forward. So Lola, I'm going to come on to you and then we'll take some questions at the end. Thanks, Lola.
Okay, thanks, Lila. So yeah, I'm here to talk about what Cranfield University is doing in terms of equity, diversity and inclusion. And for those of you that don't know Cranfield very well, perhaps it has been a more challenging place in comparison with other universities because of the focus on very hard engineering subjects like aerospace, manufacturing, transport. So in the past, most of the academics and researchers used to be male, although now things are changing and there is a more balance across male and female researchers and academics in the university. So what Cranfield is doing to promote equity, diversity and inclusion, first of all, we are reviewing our strategy for recruiting trying to attract talent from a wide range of people and audiences, making sure that we are using the right channels and information to attract those, and also promoting events related to women, and I will be talking about that in a second. We are also trying to promote the role of women within the institution and trying to retain the talent and promote women whenever we can. There is like leadership programs that are targeted to women in different stages of their career. And also we have a flexible working policy in place that was already there before COVID. So there are many things that the university is doing to try to encourage more women to come to Cranfield and to stay with us. And there has been a lot of impacts that we have seen recently. So there are more women applying for Cranfield University jobs, more female academics staying at Cranfield being promoted. There has been a reduction in the gap pay, the difference between male and female, and also all this effort has led to collaboration and awards with different charities and organizations. And talking about the future and how to attract more women and more people to green-related degrees. This is a graph showing the number of the percentage of female students in the School of Water, Energy and Environment, and you can see how the percentage of female has increased over the years, and now we are about 50% male-female. So I think there is a lot of women out there studying degrees related to STEM and also sustainability, green growth. So I hope that in the future, in the coming years, we will see those women taking important roles in that direction. And finally, I just want to draw your attention to an event that is happening next Monday. That is the Early Career Women in Water Conference, and is about promoting the role, the important role that women are doing in the water sector. So we are going to learn from early career women in the water industry, and we also have some wonderful keynote speakers. One of them is Lila here, and also we have Elise Carmel from Scottish Water, and they are going to talk about their career in the water sector. So if you want to join us, you have the details to register.
Thank you so much, Lola. So I'm going to come on then to my first question to both of you. Do you think that we need to create a new wave of degrees to attract more women in STEM, especially into the sectors that we work in?
In my view, it needs to happen before degree level. For me, as well as the day job, I'm a mum of 3 children. So they are in the midst of GCSE and A-level decision. And for me, it's about how we can influence STEM careers and make women more visible to help them inform that degree choice. The degree options in terms of connecting them to Green Zero, I believe will also contribute to that. But for me, it's about having options of STEM more visible, having those role models, being able to see jobs for me, that outreach and change to careers that will then lead on to more women moving into degrees in STEM.
I agree, Louise, because we started Women in Water, or Women on Water in 2018, as many of you will know. And that was really to sort of identify the women in the sector, because we didn't think there were many. And then when we started organising the events, I was amazed by the amount of women that were actually working in the sector. I think the problem was that I found is that when I was going to senior networking events with senior figures in the industry, I was often the only female in the room or one of a few. And so I think it's enabling women to access events and giving women the opportunities to access networking events, key conferences, so that they can use those to connect, network, and to grow their own sort of, I suppose, mentoring and support groups to progress their careers. And I think with the lots of the work that's going on in supporting women in the industry, and I know that Lola, you mentioned that, I think that will definitely help to raise the profile of the sector. Lola, did you want to make any sort of comments, additional comments on that, on degrees?
You know, I think it is important, as you said, to start from the early years. And I remember when I started the university, I did agricultural engineering, so it was quite a male-dominated subject. And one of the professors there said that he didn't understand why women were there, why we were there in the first place. And I'm not that old, so that was only 15 years ago, maybe. So I hope that things are changing now and that we will see that change in the coming years.
I think one of the things that we've kind of touched on, Lola and Louise, is that people probably are just not aware of the range of opportunities that exist in the energy and utilities sector, and also in sort of across the green space. I think people sort of know of key sort of roles that might exist, like engineering, but there's a whole raft of occupations and jobs that are available for people with STEM skills in the water and utilities industry. And one of the key things that we're trying to do is make the sector much more attractive and help school children and others to actually understand the range of jobs that are available. So how do you think we could best do that, Louise and Lola?
That's critical too. That's partly down to the sector and the outreach that the sector does, but in my view as well, it's about influencing the curriculum. So how you bring and apply real world scenarios in science, maths and the associated courses. If my children could understand that combustion could mean that you're generating power in the future, then being able to see that application for me is critical.
Thank you. Lola?
Yeah, but I think in general, like the next generation is, I guess, has a different mindset perhaps in terms of sustainability and green growth. They understand more like the importance of contributing to that challenge that I think is the greatest challenge that we are facing at the moment. So perhaps with that challenge in mind, they might be more enthusiastic about green-related subjects, sustainability, and that will make a difference.
Yeah, and the research that I presented in my slide deck absolutely indicates that. So maybe changing some of the commentary and relating it much more to green jobs and net zero.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Louise and Lola. We have run out of time, but thank you so much. And if you've got any questions, just please feel free to forward them through the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I've just got a quick message that I've been told that the chat currently isn't working. So I've been told that they're doing everything they can to get the chat to work. So just to bear that in mind for the time being. Today, I'm going to be giving a talk on the Blue Planet effect at Surfchem. And really what this is about how the Blue Planet programme went out, and it was all talking about sustainability. It was talking about all the other things that are going on, and yet what we were looking at was seeing how that was affecting Surfchem and what we were doing. So what I wanted to talk to you today about is really what we've done to enhance that within our business and how we've been able to move that through our business. Just to give you a little bit of an indication of who we are, Surfchem are a chemical distributor. We so we're a chemical distributor. We are based in the UK, and we supply to many different businesses in many different sectors. We have an office that's based in Leeds, and we have a warehousing facility that's based at Elland, which is between Surfchem and, sorry, my slides are just going a bit. Yeah, So we are, our warehousing facility is based in Elland between Huddersfield and Halifax. And we have our sampling company that's based in Elland as well. And then we also have a facility for our laboratories, which are based at the 2M that are based at, that are based at the 3M Buckley Centre at Huddersfield University. And where we distribute to more than 90 different countries, so we have an export area, and we're very passionate about innovation, and we run that throughout the whole of our business, but we're also very passionate about STEM and what we are doing for STEM and building that up within everything that we do as a business. Just to give you a little bit more of an information over what we do with distribution, essentially what we are, we're a business that links manufacturers with customers. And the manufacturers are manufacturers of raw material ingredients that tend to be exceptionally good at dealing with very large businesses and being able to move businesses very quickly through. And products very quickly through in large quantities. And where a distributor comes into play is when we're talking about smaller quantities being moved throughout businesses. So essentially we take raw material ingredients, we're then bringing it into the marketplace, discussing that with customers and getting them to test those materials out. And then those customers are then giving us back lots of information over how those products have performed, the sorts of markets that they can go into, and we will relay that back to the manufacturer. So it's very much an infinity loop in the fact that it's just a movement, a flow of different bits of information all the time. So when we look at the different businesses that we work with, we've got Surfchem that's based in the UK, and we look after Ireland. We've got an international company that deals with all our international businesses. We've also got a business that's based in Belgium. We've got the Nordics, we've got Brazil, we've got Germany, we've got France. So we're very much an international business supplying all over the world, but we have those bases in those countries. And what you can see here is the sorts of market sectors that we supply into, very much into the personal care area and into the household, industrial and institutional, but then also into the pharmaceutical area. But we sell into almost any area that requires the chemicals that we supply, and we're always looking at innovative ways of using those chemicals in those areas. So we're not just stuck into one sector, although we supply very heavily into the personal care and the household sectors. If I can also tell you a little bit about me. My name is Vax Jones, and I've been at Surfchem for 30 years, which is a long time. And I originally used to work many years ago for a Swiss company before I started at Surfchem. But at Surfchem, I was in sales right at the beginning, and then I moved into the business management and then into the technical area, and then I became technical director. I look after a number of key areas, but the key areas really are technical service, technical development, and also our laboratory facilities. And essentially, I'm massively involved in recruitment. I'm massively involved in the whole side of year in industry students, which is a really big passion of mine because I was a year in industry student, and I think it really was a great way of getting into the industry. But there are all sorts of different areas that I look after. One of the other things I look after is I look after the values at Surfchem, which are linked into your company culture. And really it's about bringing that through and how you get your company to think about how it's going to progress forward and how it brings its staff with them. So if I can just give you an idea of around the 1990s, 1991, when I first started at Surfchem, it was very much a male-dominated area. It was very much I started in sales right at the beginning, and when I started in sales, though it was literally male-dominated and the industry was male-dominated. And previous to that, when I worked for the Swiss company, it was a very male-dominated conservative company. The next woman, the highest placed woman, was my boss, and she wasn't that far up the chain. And that's what I saw. When I first joined Surfchem, it was very much the same, very male-dominated. I mean, we are talking a number of years ago, and this is before the internet, before email. So we had secretaries in those days, and so there were two women that were in the business. We had a business manager, and we also had a lady that was out on the road as a representative, and that was really unheard of. You didn't see many women in that area whatsoever. Essentially, I came into this business, and the customers I was dealing with were male. Very much male dominated in everything that you saw. And yes, there were more women in the personal care. That's true, but still, that was the way it was. And I think it was quite difficult to get yourself heard in those kind of scenarios in those days. If you look at now in the mid-1990s, where I moved from being a salesperson into being a business manager and then into the technical area, I became the technical manager, and then I became the technical director. And when I started at the technical department, it was very busy right at the beginning. It really developed very, very quickly. And I had to recruit, and my first recruit essentially was a woman. And that woman really, was the first person, the first point of call in the first time that I'd ever recruited within the business. But I felt, because of the male domination within the business, that we needed more women, and more women were starting to come through as women started recruiting women, which is quite an interesting point. And then we started moving to having men recruiting women. But it took a bit of time to start off with. I openly recruited women. And I think the key thing that I found was that when you are in a business where you've got a lot of male domination, you can see the way that the culture works within those kind of businesses. And if you need to change that culture to get it to look differently, then this is a way forward that you have to do it by employing women. And then essentially what I found is that with the whole way that I look, I get involved in recruitment, I get involved in product development, I get involved in all sorts of different areas. But recruitment is quite an interesting one, because I not only recruit for my business area, which is technical, but I also recruit for other areas, and I get involved in recruitment in other areas. And I think that's because as a woman, I see things differently, and my colleagues acknowledge that. And I think it's it's important that you're able to see things differently, and if that is seen within your business, then that can be seen as an added advantage in moving forward. But as well as in the technical area, I look after the values at Surfchem as well, so that's something that I can talk about a little bit further on. When you look at recruitment as well, purely down to the way someone is. I mean, I look at a CV and I would say the CV gives me all this information about the person. I don't really want to know about that. I want to know about that personality of the person. I want to know about whether that person's going to fit into our business. And I think my colleagues openly acknowledge that they want me in their recruitment process because I just look at something very differently. And, you know, it's important, it's irrespective of whether they're a man or a woman, it's really down to whether they're going to fit with our business and whether they're going to, whether I feel that they're going to live and breathe what we're about as a company. When you look at the team environment from a Blue Planet effect, which is essentially, the Blue Planet effect is very much a case of sustainability, and you know what we saw in that program was plastics in the environment, plastic in the marine environment, and that became a real rallying point for people who were really adamant they didn't want that anymore. And I think this was already simmering around, and it came to the fore at that time. But I think one of the big issues that we have, and what I saw, was that we needed really high performing teams, and to get a high performing team you really do need to get your people working together. And I found that men and women working together produce a much better team event, and they were able to bring their ideas to the table. They were able to really talk through what they're wanting and what we're wanting as a business. And so high performing teams are really, really important. It really does demonstrate how you can move your business on and how you can push forward with your business and really promote your business to the best of your ability. And I think what we found is that by having these high performing teams, you get a really emotionally connected group of people that are emotionally connected to what your business wants, if you're pushing it forward in that right kind of way. And then if you look at the Blue Planet effect, and you look at what it's really about, sustainability and about being ethical, what we're looking at is, you know, an emotionally engaged workforce. And what I found with women is that women really do emotionally engage with this whole idea of sustainability and the whole idea of being ethical. And this is what we found. Now, I can talk from my own experience. My own experience was that when I was younger, I didn't really connect as much with what was going on around me in the same sort of way. We're talking a long time ago here, so we didn't have the same connections with the internet or anything like that. There wasn't the internet when I was growing up. But what I did find was that as soon as I became a mother, I became more engaged in sustainability, more engaged in recycling, more engaged about where I wanted to see my life and where I want to see my children's life going to be. And I think this is what I see with women within our business. They are very focused on where we're going to be in the future, where the planet is going to be in the future. You know, I think when you're engaged on that kind of level, you can see so many different things. So there is this nurturing effect. There's also maybe the whole idea of you know, a voice being heard. In the past, if you're in an all male environment, maybe a woman wouldn't speak up as much in that kind of environment. I feel that when you've got a mixed team where your voice is heard, where you are seen as equal to everybody else there, that you're able to voice it a lot more. And that is something that we're seeing within our own business. So that team environment is allowing people to really say what they want to say. And then if you look at what our company values are, there we go. When you see what our company values are, we stand for so many different things, but getting things done, being treated equally and fairly, you know, equality, innovation, being creative, but then also sustainability is down there. And this set of company values are the key things that drive your company culture. And you will all be aware your company values pull into your company mission statement, which then pull into your company vision and the vision of where you want to be. And that's something that I push very heavily, and I'm responsible for the values at Servchem. And what we did with the values at Servchem, let's see, there we go. What we did with the values at Servchem is that we got the members of staff together, we got our senior management together, and we got our members of staff together to come up with our ideas of where we thought we wanted to have our values to be and where they were going to be. And it was quite a big event that we did. And we narrowed it down, and actually both sides, the senior management and the staff, really came up with very similar views on what their values were. They were very similar indeed. And then I took those values and essentially developed a values day so that we could, and it was fun and it wasn't expensive, but it was something where we got the whole company engaged. And we were driving home what matters to us and what our values are. And now we also put that onto our website, we put that onto our artwork that we have, marketing. And I think the key thing really is that we're driving it home that the values matter. But then what we found was that any new employees that are coming into the business, interviewees that we see them, they all notice the values. They all want to talk about the values when they come in for interviews. So it has an impact on people. People are engaged with that, and they really want to make sure that that is something that links in with what they believe in. The sustainability part of our values is linked into the UN goals and sustainable development. Now they've got 17 goals there. No business can really match all of those goals, but as a business, what we've tried to do is match quite a number of those goals in with what we believe. And it's quite interesting because I think our suppliers are doing this, I think our customers are doing this, but we honed in on this area because this was, this was something that we hadn't really thought about in the same way. And then when you look at the key things, let's have a look. Yeah, when you look at the key things on sustainability, what we found was that, certain things resonated with our staff. So equality resonated with our staff, the fact that, a sustainable job market, and the fact that, everyone's got a place and can do things in the world, and that if we produce, if we're sustainable in what we do, then there's a likelihood that things will get better and that we can move forward. And one of the biggest things I think that we found is that women have this real push towards sustainability. If you've got equality in your workplace, and ideally where you've got 50-50 women within the business, then you've got a movement across the board where you've got a better chance of a sustainable job market, then you've got a better chance of sustainable business, which will lead to a successful business, which will lead to more jobs. And that's what I found with what we do. And then really what we found with the company culture and that whole sustainable aspect of it being in our values, that leads into the company culture. And what we found is that mixed teams really produce this balanced effect on company culture. You've all got that vested interest. You're all working towards that area and what you're working towards driving your business forward, and that you're more emotionally engaged. And women within the business really drive that emotional engagement. And essentially what I found is that when I've recruited many people within Servchem, is that a lot of those people, women and men, but a lot of those women are running big departments now within the business, and they've brought that through with them as well. So I think when you've got leadership thinking that's the way we need to be driving forward, it will filter down to your staff, who then become the next leaders in your business. But it's all about bringing the values into what you believe, and I think that's really, really important. A person's going to thrive in a good company culture if they believe that that company culture is true to itself and is really going to push the business forward as well as them forward. I wanted to really bring in some points of view from some of my colleagues so that you can just see how they look at recruitment of women within their businesses or within their business areas, so that you've got an idea of how they see things. I wanted to bring Anita in. So Anita is head of business management, and Anita started working for me quite a number of years ago, and now she has a team of people down there on that slide that you can see. And she's very much into, a case that these people all bring experience into her team. They all bring a background that she's interested in. And that she's not necessarily there just for the fact that they're a woman or they're a man. They've got to be right for this job. And then what we've got here is Anita, really making the point of view that it's irrespective of gender, it's irrespective of culture, irrespective of, your background. It's really very much a case of, this is someone who will recruit the right person for the right job, but that women are very important in her team, and that she feels that a balanced team produces the best effect for her and her business area. And if I just bring in the next slide here, which is Darren, and let's just start this slide.
Hi, I'm Darren Upton. I'm a Senior Technical Development Manager at Surfachem. I currently work in a mixed gender technical team, and we also collaborate with other mixed gender teams across the business, including business management and commercial activities. I believe that you get a more rounded perspective in decision making, which leads to better innovation when you have mixed gender teams. So when looking to recruit, the gender balance of the team is an important part of the decision making process.
So Darren is head of technical development, and Darren will look at the makeup of his team to see what is the best way forward, and that's what he's done, and that's how he recruits. I'm going to bring in Jason as well now, who heads up the personal care. Darren heads up the I&I, which is the industrial and institutional area. And let's see what Jason has to say.
Hi, I'm Jason Dearden-Watts, and I'm the Senior Technical Development Manager for Personal Care at Surfachem. I've been at Surfachem for 7 years, and we now do have a mixed gender team of men and women. But when I first started, it was all male. And you need that mixture, I think, of men and women who bring different experiences, life experience, cultural experience, and also workplace experience. And the first thing I really look for when I'm looking for new members of the team is experience, really. What's their work experience? What's their life experience? And then for this kind of role where you're customer facing, you need the right personality, the right enthusiasm. You need to be good at socialising, because it's a job where you're customer facing and you talk to people all the time. And I feel that if, in a team, you need to have the male side and the female side for that. They both bring different skills, they both bring different ideas, and a mixed team, for me, is far better than an all-male team or an all-female team.
So that was Jason. Jason heads up our personal care area. And again, Jason and Darren both were in the business when it was an all-male team. So they've openly gone and recruited women. And now they have 50% women within their teams, both teams. So that within the technical area, we've got predominantly 50% women in these areas, and then in our labs it's predominantly women. And then if I just talk a little bit about the last couple of slides, Blue Planet effect from a business future. So when the Blue Planet programme went out, where a lot of customers came onto us, suppliers came onto us, but we were already working through the sustainability within our business because we already had it as part of our values. And we were already looking at a number of different initiatives of how we can work together. So we were really well placed to be able to move forward with our suppliers and our customers to help drive sustainability forward. And so we didn't feel that we were on the back foot with that. We felt that it was working very, very well for us. I think the fact that we're with social media, that we are seeing what's going on in social media also is really important, and our marketing has played a great role in that area of pushing us into the forefront. So that, and I think that comes with innovation. I think when you're innovatively looking at something, you're looking at disruptive influences within this whole area, you can see how you can work with the people that you've got working for you, but then also your customer base and your supplier base. And our marketing team are based with ex-technical people as well. So again, it's a mixed team. So really, finally, what the last slide I just wanted to say really is the Blue Planet effect, and we're talking about a sustainable business. For a sustainable business, women are very, very important in that. They have really changed the way that Surfchem looks at the way that we do business. They're looking at innovation with our male colleagues together, and is very much a case of both men and women working together to really bring us forward in our business way. And sustainability is part of our values. And because sustainability is part of the values, it's sustainability that's constantly in the mindset of the staff to basically say, what are we doing towards that? And this is how I think at the end of the day, as a business, we'll move forward and we'll progress, because everyone is working towards those things. But women in STEM are critical to the business. Women in STEM have been coming into our business for many, many years. And we're very proud to say that I think as a business, we're pretty much 50-50, which is where we want to be and which is where we see the business moving forward. And we would never recruit on the basis of, on a gender basis. It's always about who is right for the job and who has the right attributes to be able to push our business forward, and who's going to really live and breathe the values to be able to push our business forward. So hopefully with those little technical hiccups right at the beginning of this, I hope that's that over and done with, but that's the end of my presentation. So if there are any questions, then happy to answer any of those coming through. So let's have a look. Yeah, so thank you very much for listening today, and if there are any questions that you want to put through, if the chat is working, that's great. If not, then no worries about that, and thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for that, Bax, and a huge thank you to all of our speakers from today. Just to say again, we do apologise, there was an issue with the chat, as you probably saw, and I know you're all so keen to keep talking to each other and that you noticed that. We've got that fixed now, and that'll be up and running for our second session next Tuesday. Thank you to all our speakers today. One thing that really struck me is my daughter, who's 11, has a poster of Greta Thunberg on her bedroom wall. That's the person who she got up there rather than pop stars or anyone else. And I think it's really collectively, we can help ignite those sparks in girls to help them realise that STEM and sustainability is a career which will really help change the world in a positive way. And it's up to us to make sure that those girls can find the careers, can then be retained and promoted within their roles to really pursue their potential in STEM and in sustainability. The poll I said earlier, when we looked at the results, it's actually quite evenly split across those 3 areas of attraction, retention and promotion. And I think that's a really key part for us, is it's not just one silver bullet to fix any of this. We need to work together across the whole pipeline to make sure that we can address the gender balance in STEM for sustainability. Thank you so much for all being here and being so engaged in our conference today. It's been fantastic to hear from as many of you as we have. Just to remind you all that our next event, part of this conference, is next Tuesday, so you can use the same link that you have, excuse me, for this ticket that you used today. In that second session next week, we'll be able to dig a bit deeper into some of the things which have come up today, some of those things which have inspired us. We've got some fantastic workshops next week into building allyship, into promotion of women, finding a mentor and personal brand. And we've got some brilliant panels and some other fantastic speakers as well. If you'd like other people to join between now and then, there's still time to register for next week. And like I said, we really hope to see you all there as well. Again, on behalf of all of us, a huge thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.